Good morning. Dr. Aria could not make it today, so I have a more distinguished guest, my stepdaughter, Jasmine. And sorry, Les, you are being displaced badly, really badly. So you have to fight for your seat back. But anyway, Jasmine and I have done a lot of workshops together. And I know she's my stepdaughter and I can gush on forever about her. And she sort of hates it, but she's here today for a reason. And I'm excited she's willing to talk to us about this because I met her when she's 11. And she ended up with a really severe eating disorder from about age 14 to 25 or 26, Jazz, maybe longer.
Yeah, well, yeah, maybe 24, but
you made a comment this morning which I thought was interesting because we've been talking about body image disorders this week. There's actually a neurological trick that every human being has some body image disorder. I mean, you can't like everything on your body. So you might like 100 things, and that one thing is something that keeps coming back into your mind. You keep suppressing, and it starts to grow. So how old were you when you said this all started about the body image issue?
So I was mentioning that the first time I remember actually identifying a part of my body that I disliked and wanted to do something about it, I was around 8 years old.
8 years old. Do you think that the marketing in the world today makes that worse about the whole body image issue?
Absolutely. I think that especially now, I can't imagine being bombarded with as many images that kids these days are. But I think that, there's also the family to look at there for if you have a mom or a dad who are also
or
have those, or a stepdad who have those patterns. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree,
Yeah, well, I mean, what happened? So at what age did it become troublesome?
13, 14 is when, at 14, I remember making a conscious decision to stop eating, basically. And all of that revolved around a spike in my anxiety as a freshman. That's when I found out a lot of things, and there were a lot going on hormonally that I couldn't handle it. And so it really is directly a control kind of issue for me to try to what's the word? Mitigate my anxiety. I use control as an antidote, and that in turn led me to hospitalization.
Right. So at the worst part of your ordeal, say like 16, 17, 18, which seemed really bad to me, how bad was it? What was your life like at the worst part of this deal?
It kind of feels like I threw in the towel, and like I just hated myself. I hated myself so much that I just didn't care to move forward. I think that, probably at 15, 16, I started to act out.
Really?
And that's probably why you think that was the worst time.
Oh my God. Well, yeah,
I
just
was
a little bit.
mentioning, it's so weird to think about, even, in my early 20s, struggling when I wasn't even at home with eating stuff, whether that was eating too much, not eating enough, and kind of fluctuating with my body. Being in a dance program, that was really terrible in a way for me, because you're constantly being confronted with your body, and the teachers and your peers aren't so encouraging about it. They want you to be a certain figure in a dance program. So that was also that was very hard. And those thoughts, I'll just say, it's not that they have left the room, they're just not as loud.
Right. So I've got one question. We'll go into a little bit of this in a second. So what percent of your people between ages 15 to 30, which is they're a little bit younger than you are now, but what percent of people in this age group do you think have troubling anxiety? Just amongst your friends and peers and people you talk to, how big of an issue is anxiety?
I mean, I think everybody has anxiety. You've mentioned before that that it's a mechanism to stay alive.
Right.
Why we have anxiety. I think that majority of my friends and people I'm around don't have the tools to because it's not about getting rid of anxiety. Anxiety is going to be there, but the
Right.
tools to mitigate it. And I think probably majority of everyone I know struggles with this,
Right.
especially, looking at what's happening in the world. It's pretty easy to kind of flare up and get anxious. And with COVID, the isolating and
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think
anyways.
yeah, I think it's a big, was that? Yeah, I think it's a huge
Nothing.
step that you're actually able to talk about this now because you haven't really been able to talk about this before now. So we are going to do a podcast and talk about this in detail. But I will say that Jazz had an extreme eating disorder. It was bad. Hospitalizations, heart rate going down to 40. I mean, it was really touch and go for years. And our whole family got involved in it. So I know way more about eating disorders than I ever thought I would. And so, but I've made the comment a long time, anxiety is physiological, not psychological. It's necessary for survival. You're not going to conquer it. And I just want, but you cannot outrun your mind. So do you remember the comment I made? You say, Jazz, you're maybe 18 at the time. So look, if 10 million people sign a petition and saying that you're the most attractive person in the world, what would you say? Do you remember that conversation? Do you remember the answer you would give?
No, what
You
did I
said they
say? I'm
wouldn't really,
curious.
you said that they wouldn't really know who I am,
Oh, yeah.
right? You remember that? So that always stuck with me a little bit because, you know, it's impossible. This is not rational stuff. So the solution in my mind is consistent with what we've been talking about here. And you made a comment before we started about one part of the solution, just a principle about your thoughts and separating from them.
Yeah, I think that the most major breakthrough I had was when I was doing CBT work with Dr. May, and he
So
really did.
that's cognitive behavioral therapy, by the way.
Yeah, and that actually they've done a lot of studies that CBT work, I think, is really helpful just to get someone into a functioning state. And then I think there are other therapies that are really helpful if you want to go deeper into, what drew you to not be functioning that well. But
Right.
CBT really got me back and really got me to feel alive and happy to be in my skin again. And I think that really had to do with Dr. May really helping me identify these thoughts and then separating from them. And we did different kinds of exercises, role playing exercises, writing exercises. Similar to the expressive writing, I think that it kind of gets to the same place where you're identifying and separating from. So whatever you're thinking and reeling on is going to make you feel a certain way. It's kind of it's not brain surgery. It's like pretty self-explanatory. So once
Right.
you start to have different thoughts, which will happen when you're noticing and observing, then you ultimately start to feel better.
Right. And the thing that's tricky, I think for me too, I mean, we could talk about this when we do our podcast together, but I mean, all of us have anxiety. We all do things to try to cope with it, which a lot of it's not so healthy. I there's also a famous line that you gave me when I told people, so I'm a workaholic, and I told you, I told you I'm not a workaholic because I really like what I do. And what was do you remember your answer?
Yeah, you say it really more succinctly, but I remember what I said.
What
Feel
was that?
go, say the punchline.
Yeah, she said, well, every addict likes his drug.
Yeah.
So touche. So anyway, Jazz, this is great. So I just want to leave people with a thought. Well, I'll actually try to listen for a second, which is not my strong point, as you might have noticed.
I noticed when I watched the other Facebook lives, I said, let's have a word in.
Why? I mean, I'm important. So I guess so any just one thought for the day, because a lot of people as we speak are listening to this program are struggling with eating issues and body image issues. So just a thought maybe that just helps turn the ship a little bit for the day.
Yeah, I think that the first step is committing to want to feel better. If you want to feel better, then you can start to parse out, the thoughts and do work around that. But but there needs to be a commitment to wanting to do that first.
Right. And of course, it's a catch 22 because when you're feeling badly, you don't care.
You don't give, yeah, you don't care.
Right. It's a really, of course, you and I belong to a society that we're not going to mention on the air today because that's what you do.
But also, even if you fall off the wagon, it's really easy. I mean, it's going to be there to jump back on. I mean, you can always recommit, start over, clean
Right.
slate next day. It's okay. I think that also being gentle with yourself too is important,
Right.
but committing to the journey, if even if that means you fall off, come back on. I
Yeah.
think that's the first step.
Right. I mean, right. So, well, Jess, thank you. It was nice to say hello to you this morning. I'm not used to seeing you this
It's
early in the morning. No,
early.
it's not early.
God.
I've been up for a couple hours. Les gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning, for
I
goodness.
know you two are maniacs. I don't understand.
But we love what we do. And,
Addicts. Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
all right. Well, Jess, thank you. Have a great day. And maybe you
Thanks.
should go back to bed and take a nap before you go to work today.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. Boy, yeah.
All right. See you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.